Assalamu alaikum to everybody. Good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are joining us from different parts of the world. My name is Sohaila Chima. I am an associate professor of clinical population health sciences here at Weill Cornell Medicine, and also the assistant dean for the Institute for Population Health. I would like to extend a very warm welcome to each of you participating today with us. And you're joining us for the Health and You Community Wellness Series. And as you may know, for those who have attended earlier sessions, the overall goal of the series is really to create community awareness about health and disease, and with the ultimate objective of the series to enhance self-care, reduce suffering, improve quality of life, and increase healthy longevity. Just as a reminder, this is not a CME CPD activity. And of course, our audience is the general public here. Some housekeeping: your cameras and microphones have been turned off. Please use the Q&A feature to type questions or comments, or you could also directly put them into the chat, and we, the panelists, and Dr. Amal Khidir, our speaker, she will be able to also view it. So if you don't want to put it in the Q&A tab, please just go ahead and type it in the chat. We will be able to view these. And questions, again, will be addressed at the end of the session, and I'll moderate that session for Dr. Khidir. Again, no certificates of attendance will be issued for this session. So we have a very interesting topic today. Of course, the topic is avoiding the fights, children's healthy nutrition and eating habits. And it gives me great pleasure and honor to introduce our speaker for today, who is Dr. Amal Khidir. So Dr. Amal Khidir, she's an associate professor of pediatrics and medical education at Weill Cornell Medicine in Qatar. She's also the vice chair of IRB and the pediatric clerkship director. She joined Cornell in 2006. She's American board certified and fellow of American Academy of Pediatrics, section of International Child Health. She practices pediatrics in Hamad Medical Corporation and Sidra Medicine, and is also co-leader of the Research and Scholarship Collaborative Council of Medical Students Education in Pediatrics. Her areas of interest in medical education are professionalism, professional development, assessment, health promotion, and cultural competency. She's co-founder of the professionalism program at Hamad Medical Corporation. She's led and conducted several national and international profession education workshops, and also earned several teaching awards and the COMCEPT 2021 Research and Scholarship Award. She's been the recipient of several research grants. She's supervised medical students in several clinical studies and has published widely in peer-reviewed journal. So Dr. Amal Khidir, a very warm welcome to you, and thank you for doing this session, and over to you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Shima, for the kind words and for the invitation. And thank you all to all our audience and attendees today. And I hope by the end of this talk, we can reach to some sort of some peace of mind, hopefully. Okay, so we're going to talk about avoiding fights. And as a disclosure, I have no conflict of interest. I'm going to use different pictures I got from the internet that I hope can gear and trigger some further thoughts as we go through this. And I want to share with you that by the end of the talk, I hope it will be some information as an eye-opener, basically for new parents or even for parents who have kids they're struggling with. Also, I hope it can explain to them why we get where we get and why we get stuck, and maybe assurance to many of the attendees here that most of the kids are normal. There is a very small percentage of children who has truly a problem with food, and those can have some either genetic issues or metabolic issues, and that can be sorted with your pediatrician. So I'm going to share some words of wisdom by the two authors of the book, Food Fights: Winning the Nutritional Challenges of Parenthood, Armed with Insights, Humor, and Bottle of Ketchup. Both of them had these books through the American Academy of Pediatrics. And one of them is saying it is impossible to ignore the fact that food-related battles rank right at the top of the daily list of parental challenges. And this speaks to that for the parents who have children that give them hard time with feeding. I'm sure they wake up from the morning thinking, how are we going to handle the day today, and how will they eat and how much they will eat? And it's going to be a battle for some time. But with some basic insights, and that's why I'm going to share some facts with you, along with some palatable kind of peacekeeping strategies, which was also will share with you, you can win this battle. And hopefully you can help them to have lifelong kind of eating habits and healthy living. So the reality is, I'm going to start with some challenges and then share some scientific facts. One of the challenges, many of the children are taken care of them by the parents, either mom and dad or a single parent. In our context, sometimes we have some other caregivers. It can be the auntie, the sitter, the helper, the maid, and also we have other participants in this who are also the teachers in either the daycare or the school. And sometimes the expectations of the caregiver or the parent and the child do not match. We also are blessed sometimes with the extended family, which is a big plus to support the family, especially the mom just after birth. Definitely she needs a lot of support. We're blessed with that. However, in sometimes when you live within the extended family, you have other contributors. Like if the mom come, and it happened to me, like sometimes she comes to the clinic, we go over the details, nutritional history, and we want to set a different plan. And the plan has certain routine, avoiding snacking and all of that. It becomes a problem if there are other kids in the household, or you have other adults who will interfere. The baby's crying, why you don't feed the baby, and others. So that is another pressure. The other pressure that the parents might face is the comparison. And this pressure can happen to the kids too. Like sometimes the kids feel they're tinier than the others, they're smaller, even for the older kids. Or the parents themselves, even sometimes some curious people ask them in the mall, how old is your child? And they say this, and they, oh, but he's tiny or small. Also within the family, they are smaller than their cousins, for example. So all of that add to the mix to make sometimes the parents really worried, and sometimes their children are normal, but the people around them are giants. Because as you know, obesity is increasing. Many kids are also into fast food and others. The other pressure is even peer pressure among the children. For example, mommy send the child in the lunchbox with particular kind of food. The child goes to school, find all other kids eating like different other things, from candy, depending on the school, if it allow it or not, all the way to cakes and others. And then the child comes home and start resisting what the parents are giving them. The other issue is the autonomy. The child, him or herself, do have their own autonomy, the same as the parent trying to get their autonomy when they're pressured by others. So the bottom line, we are sometimes are not all of us on the same page. And the most really I see create more issues if the parent, the mom and the dad, are not on the same page. And you realize quickly, it's not only the plate and the food, which can be the source of the conflict. There are many other factors around it. So it's not only the eating, opening the mouth and getting some nutrients in. There's other things like the temper tantrum will creep into this, and other things. So let me share some facts with you. So this feeding starts from day one, as you know. Once the baby comes out, either breastfed, hopefully, or formula fed. And what happened at that time, and breastfeeding, we'll talk a little bit more about it later, that is the start of that journey. And I want the parents, if they have one child or more, or the caregiver, every child is different. And every child have a different way of handling things, and we have to be aware of that. So again, no one size fits all. The other thing you need to be aware of is the developmental milestones. And what I mean by that, remember the baby is born, then they start raising their head, then they start to sit with some support, then they sit unsupported, they crawl and walk and run. All of this, we call them developmental milestone, but this is only on the gross development. We have the fine development, language, and others. So even the nutrition and how we feed them is related to that readiness, developmentally, and we'll talk more about it. The tongue thrust is another reflex the baby is born with. Basically, if you put anything in the tongue, they push the tongue out. And that confuses the parents when they want to feed them because they put the food in, they push it out, they think the child doesn't like it. But that's an automatic reflex. Anything you put in the mouth, they push the tongue out. Usually it disappears around 4 months. But some kids takes a little bit longer. I'm not talking about the child who has any neurological deficit. I'm talking about a normal child. Now, the tongue movement, we all take it for granted because, alhamdulillah, we're all eating, hopefully, and drinking. So the movement is like this. The food has to come up front in the tongue moves it from front to back, and then from back to swallow. So we take it for granted. Some very rarely, some children have some swallowing disorder that we need to refer them for care, but that is the normal movement. And that's why until the child figures it out, I tell the parents sometimes in the clinic, the baby is trying to figure out, there is a lot of learning happening until the baby figures it out. And then if the tongue thrust is still there, you have to give them, you will keep trying. And then maybe you give them another week, maybe they're developmentally not ready, then you try it again. And we're going to talk that the feeding itself should start around 6 months. Again, it's a learning experience from the breastfeeding all the way to older child because you are trying to understand the child is trying to understand what's going on. So it's from both sides. The child is learning how to eat and do stuff and testing their appetite and what have you, and the parents are trying to figure out what's going on with the child. So it's always a work in progress. Again, we talked about the autonomy. The child might have their likes and dislikes, and we have to respect that. And what I mean here by the lost battle, I always tell my patients, the children, we can take them wherever we want because you put them in the car, you take them, right? You can dress them whatever you want. But there are two things that you have no way to win, which is fighting with the two openings, the mouth and the end, basically the mouth and their inner opening. So any fight around feeding them, any conflict around that, and any conflict about toilet training, trust me, you're going to lose because they have full autonomy and control of that. So try not to have fights there. And again, your patience is going to be tested if you like it or not. You will get frustrated many times, but try to figure out a way to calm yourself and control it, and always give the child healthy choices. And we're going to talk further about that. Other facts that I want to share with you is children double their birth weight by 6 months and triple it by 3 years, okay? By 1 year, sorry. So they double it by 6 months and triple it by a year. Why I'm sharing this? Because sometimes parents are so worried that my child is not growing and they think they are behind or what have you, but this just to give you a quick formula. There is a spurt of growth early on in infancy, and that's why I really encourage you to look at the growth chart, and I'm going to share one soon. And then their appetite also gets affected and slower when they become 2 years, when they're moving further. So around 2 years, the appetite and the growth spurt a little bit slows, and then it picks up again during adolescence. When they're 2 years, they start the food preference. So that's why when you start at 6 months to feed them, there is no preference there. Their taste buds are not really trained to like this and hate that and like sugary versus salty and all of that. But around 2 years, they have some sort of preference happening, and you need to be aware of it. And sometimes when you're feeding them something new, it might take up to 15 to 20 times of trials before they accept it. So you offer them, let's say today, carrots, they didn't like it, you try, it didn't work. You can come, Danny, again after a few days and try it again. It didn't work, try it again and again. So sometimes it takes that much of time before they start accepting it. And then the kids are more slightly natural, but many times we interfere with that natural kind of process. Meaning, early on, we say ad lib, feed the baby, right? After like 2 months, the baby starts to sleep at night. They have stretches at night. And the other day I had a mom who really literally continuing to wake the baby every 3 hours. I said, why? If you're blessed by them sleeping at night, let them sleep. Because if you keep doing that, you are messing around with their biological clock. And then You give them milk when they wake up. So you're giving them a treat. So you're helping them to build that bad habit of waking up at night. That's one. And then when anytime the baby cries, regardless, they feed the baby. So that give them, and sometimes they put them to bed with the bottle or to let them soothe themselves to sleep. So that's, imagine in their development, they will think like food is for comfort. And you can imagine how that will be when they're frustrated at school or at a game or something else, that they comfort themselves by eating. And that can lead to some other weight-related problems as they grow. And as I mentioned, the other growth spurt happen at adolescence. I'm sharing the weight curve. This is the WHO, but we usually use the CDC depending on which hospital you're at. This is a curve for different age groups. We have 2, 3 of them, okay? We have some for boys, some for girls. The children supposedly to be between these four or more, depends because the CDC have more percentiles, okay? They have to be within these, right? And usually the growth usually follows one of those lines, not necessarily in the center, because some parents, their kids follow on this pick one and they feel their child is abnormal or tiny, or the -2 or 2. Any of these lines, this is the growth velocity. They should follow on them. But you also realize it's not going to be a linear curve. It's going to be fluctuating. Sometimes they gain a lot, sometimes less, and so forth. As long as you do that, they are normal. We're happy with it. And the other reason I want to share this with you, because sometimes the parents tell me, my child is 1 year old, he's 10 kilos. Is that okay or not? I refrain from answering that. Although if I plot him in the curve, in the chart, they look normal. Because to draw any line, you need 2 points, right? So maybe he was 15 and now he's 10. That's abnormal. Maybe he was 7 4 weeks ago. Now he's 10. He gained 3 kilos in that 4 weeks. That is abnormal. So that's why I refrain from answering and tell them I need to look at the growth chart and have more than one reading to tell you if he's normal or not. Because we don't want to see this where they cross the lines and go down. That is failure to thrive. And we don't want to see this when they're like super going up there. Okay, so that's why the growth and the weight, we need to look at the percentiles, looking at the chart. And I empower anyone with us today. We use this chart up to 18 years. And as per the academy, can go up to 21, because the pediatric age group can go up to 21. Okay, and we have for weight and height, and the head goes up to 2 years only. Okay, now quickly talking about the different modalities of feeding early, and then we'll look at the challenges and how some solutions. The breastfeeding is the natural feeding. The breast milk is not only milk, which contains carbohydrates, fat, and protein, but it also has antibodies. That's why we really encourage breastfeeding. And the breastfeeding can go up to 2 years, as you know, okay? Also, we have formula feeding. Some people have strong beliefs in fat babies are healthy babies. And that's why many of them don't do the breastfeeding, because they want the babies to be fat, because the formula can be fattening. However, that doesn't mean it's healthier. And having a fat baby doesn't mean it's a healthy baby, okay? So currently in Qatar, we have lactation consultants who will support moms to continue breastfeeding. And I want to inform any new parents or parents to be, the breastfeeding, the first 2 weeks are very critical. So I encourage the parents or the mom to be careful about the first 2 weeks, to be always in consultation with her doctor or lactation consultant to set it up. And you will realize, even if the mom breastfed 2 or 3 kids, number 5 might be also different. So it's, as I said, it's always a learning process and work in progress. Okay, and it's very critical. Not every cry is hunger. Okay, and people have to pay attention. When did they eat and how much they ate, how much they drank, and when did they drink? Because I have seen some parents feeding every 1 hour. That is not even normal. It's not good to do that either. Okay, and water intake in the younger age, you don't need, because the breast milk is 70% water and the formula is the same. We give water only if it is really, the kid is older and they are in a hot weather, like camping in the sun in the summer somewhere where everybody is thirsty. And the solid food, yani the baby has to have breastfeeding or formula, and prefer breastfeeding up to 6 months before we start feeding them. But we still have the room between 4 to 6. They can start feeding when they're ready, and we're going to look at the readiness, when to start. And before you start, you need to understand it's going to be messy. When to start, between 4 and 6 months, the child will show you signs. We prefer 6 to minimize the allergies, which we're not going to talk about today. The signs of readiness in the child, that they hold their head up. So basically they can support the head. Okay, usually that starts at 4 months. They can sit well supported, because if they're wiggling, they can choke. We prefer the high chair because you can have better control on them sitting. Okay, and they are big enough, meaning they either double their weight, which is usually, we said they double it by 6 months, but in our area, some of them double it earlier, or they're 13 pounds. And you'll see them opening their mouths all the way, following people when there's food. So that tells you they are a little bit ready to start. And when you start, remember the tongue thrust we talked about. If it's still happening, give them a week and then try again. Okay, and the spoon feeding takes time, because you're going to feed them with spoon. Avoid having cereal in the bottle. The cereal in the bottle, we use it for specific illnesses, right? But try to feed them by the spoon. And what you can do, you can put the spoon in the mouth, make the cereal, usually start with rice cereal, make it watery in the beginning. And then when you put the spoon in the mouth, you can rub it against the upper gum as you're pulling it out, so it will retain it in the mouth. And then they must spit it out if the tongue thrust is there, or they're starting to figure out to push it back and swallow it. And it takes time. So you cannot rush to feed them, okay? So have a time, set aside a time to feed the kid and be patient. Usually around 6 months, they're not even dependent on the food you're giving it to them. They're dependent on the formula they're taking or the milk they're taking. And the timing is very important. You cannot have him crying and screaming and upset and you want to feed him or her. So you have to also pay attention to the appetite extreme. If the child is so hungry and mad, give them a little bit of breast milk or formula, just a little bit. Don't fill them up, because otherwise they will not eat, okay? It's like us, if you're full, you don't eat, right? So you have to be careful about to give them a little bit, just to soothe them a little bit, and then feed them. Or if they're full, they won't like to eat because they are not hungry. So you have to catch them in a good time, okay? And read the signs. For example, you have seen those videos on YouTube when you give them a sour food and they make that funny faces. So sometimes they like stuff, they dislike stuff. So read that sign. So if they're happy with whatever you're giving them, even if they make all these faces, they will open up their mouth again. If they shut their mouth and they refuse completely to open, that's a clue for you to realize that maybe they didn't like it. And always do not force it. Okay? Okay. So I'm going to share some measurements here to give you an idea about the volume of things and the size. Like 1 tablespoon is like 15 ml, which is half an ounce. The ounce is 30 ml. And the 1 cup is like 8 ounces to 40 ml and so forth. I'm just sharing this with you because I'm going to give you example of some meals. And this is just from this website. But again, each family might have different content. But the reason I'm showing you these meals when I show it to you is to tell you how small and tiny they can eat. At 1 year of age, half of the calories are from fat, but healthy fat. 1,000 calories per day is highly recommended. And usually by 1 year, they can be breastfed or regular milk, like Baladna, for example. Okay? And highly, this from my experience also by the research, we have to stop the bottle. Okay? Because if you don't stop it around 1 year, it becomes a little bit harder. You definitely can stop it, but you don't want the child 4 years old walking with a bottle. I tell them this is the baby's shisha when they're older. So just try to stop it by 1 year. This is just a quick menu for a 1-year-old who's 9.5 kilo. And the idea of sharing this with you is to show you something about the small proportions. And this actually, again, I copied it from this website, which is healthychildren.org, and I'm going to share it with you. The bottom line, we're talking about 3 meals and 2 snacks, okay, per day. The 2-year-old, 3 meals and 1 to 2 snacks, okay? It's 1 to 2 snacks. So to simplify the matter for the parents, because the 2-year-old, they start having preferences, they want and they value their autonomy. that's the time where some of the conflict starts, because the child has preference, parents want to force something, they want to feed them this and that, and it becomes a battle. So, and then they get snacking in between because he didn't feed the breakfast, let me give him something, and then you give him something, then the lunch, he doesn't want to eat the lunch because he ate something in between. So it become messy. So I came up personally with a quick formula, the rule of 4. So I tell the parents, feed the kid 4 times. That will be meal and snack, right? 4 times only, no snacks in between. And these meals are 4 hours apart. The reason I insist on that, because in between there is a fatira coming, there is a pastry coming, there is chocolate coming, a cupcake in between. So I tell them 4 meals a day, nothing between them at all, except water, hatta no juice or milk, right? And then each meal is 4 components, which, as you know, with my plate and healthy nutrition will be grains, preferred whole grain, protein, vegetables, and fruits, and each one in a quarter, and then a drink. The drink can be juice, it can be milk, okay? And non-sugary juice, hopefully. And then at this age, you can give them the regular family food. Low-fat milk, because you can give them the 2% or skim milk. Be flexible in amount. Many times we have the plate, we want them to finish the plate, and we insist in finishing. And guess what? There is a point when the kid doesn't want to eat. Some of them, not all of them, they start throwing it up, and then it becomes messy. And then you enter that different vicious cycle that we need to fix. Okay? And again, avoid conflicts. Take a deep breath and move on. Finger food is preferred because the spoon is messy. And then some of them actually like dips too. This is a quick example of a meal just to show you that even the milk doesn't need to be like the 8-ounce milk. It can be half a cup only for the meal, okay? And it can be low fat or non-fat, okay? The cereal itself, it can be only half a cup or 1 egg. And here, as you see, the proportions are smaller, okay? Still 3 meals and 2 snacks, but again, you can also follow, and this is the proportion for a 2.5 kilo example. The 3-year-old, we have to start working with them with a healthy attitude towards eating in general. This is the age where they discover that kids are smart. So sometimes they discover that eating and me eating can please my parents or make them mad. They're not evil at all, but there is a lot of inner manipulation that we're not aware of. And I have this picture because I want to remind all of us, it's always nice to have at least 1 meal together as a family. You can have a lot happening in that meal. You can model to them many things. Like if you want them to eat vegetables and you force vegetables on them and you personally don't eat it, they're not going to eat it. And if you talk negatively about vegetables, trust me, that's a kill for even eating vegetables. But also you can have it as fun time, some bonding time, because it's not only the food. There is a lot, as I mentioned, behavioral stuff around it. Okay. And then even if you want to offer something new, as you know, some kids don't like to try anything new. And in that case, you can make it some fun things like adventure. Okay. And for every meal, let's say you want them to eat vegetables, don't bring only 1 kind of vegetable, bring 2 to 3 of them. Okay. And make the meal very simple. And don't put big portion. Like you want to try, for example, zucchini. You don't need to bring big amount and get it spoiled. You can bring a small amount and let them try it. And make the meal very simple, because you want when you make a lot of effort cooking for the people within the audience who cook, if you have a lot of effort and they don't eat it, it's a little bit disappointing, right? So we don't want to add any frustration. So make the meal simple. Give it to them in small proportion, especially the new food. And every meal, if you want them to eat something new, give them more than 1 option there. Okay. Avoid screen and any distractions during the meal. And it's the last bullet point, I put it there and I would like to bold it, which is respect and accept their preferences. Because the child, him or herself, will decide what to eat and how much. That doesn't mean I give you this food you don't like, I go and bake or cook something else. You prepare 2 to 3 options, and that's all what you have, because they want to choose. They want to feel I have the autonomy to choose. And you give them that. You give them, like, for example, salad or steamed broccoli, for example. But that doesn't mean I don't like it, I'm going to fry some potato and bring it in, for example. You're going to offer them these two and let them choose between the two. Because then they feel, okay, I can choose. You got what I mean? Okay. But you have to respect also, they might be full. And that's why you have to be careful in building some routine in the feeds, in offering the meals. So also 5 years old, 4 to 5, you offer them the family food. And I put here the parent or the caregiver role is to offer the healthy choices, make sure the environment is calm. You don't want to fight, you don't want to chase, you don't need to chase them, you don't need to argue with them. Again, smaller sizes because it can get wasted. Have it on a regular time and sit together. So you can, as a family, decide we'll sit together during dinner or lunch, okay? But have it regular timing. And I know parents are working, they come at different times, and it's very hard to have a family meal time, but try to your best to stick to one of them. And if all fails, at least have it in the weekends, okay? Again, no screen, and you have to model and teach them the table manners. For example, talking while their mouth is full, crossing across other people's food, whatever other, is an opportunity for building other behavior, okay? Limit processed food and sugary drinks, okay? The child role actually is to decide if they're hungry or not, okay? And they decide how much I want to eat. Again, I said sometimes we force them to finish the amount we put in front of them. And sometimes you bring a screen to distract them to finish it. And sometimes you chase them, they left it, you go back and chase them for half an hour and become a struggle. And I hear it a lot, either from the father that the mom is fighting with the kid, or she's chasing them, or the mom coming tired and exhausted. I don't know what to do with him or her because I'm chasing them. Just follow the rule of 4. The child needs to feel hungry to be able to eat. And if we're missing that, then we are really generating our own conflict. Okay, this is also another example to tell you about the proportions. And again, the fat can be low fat milk, as we talked about, okay? So if you see, for example, the dinner, to make it easier, you have a half cup of milk, okay? 2 ounces of fish or chicken or others, half a cup of pasta. Can you imagine half a cup of pasta and then half a cup of vegetables? We usually want to fill the whole plate, okay? Done. Now, vegetables. I love this picture. Also, I put the citation in the bottom. Okay, what ideally should be to eat any, they call it greens, but the word green, because we have candies which is green, but whenever it comes to vegetables, become a different green. We need 2 to 3 servings per day. Actually, we need 5 servings a day, including fruits. So if you take 2 to 3 servings of vegetables, you can have 2 to 3 servings of fruits per day. And roughly, this is an estimate from from the book, actually, 1 tablespoon per year of age. And the tablespoon, these are examples, okay? So let's say the child is 5 years, will be 5 tablespoons, which will be 5 serving of any of these, which is like 1 tablespoon can be 20 small peas or 3 whole grains, green beans, and so forth, okay? So this just to give you an estimate. Now, remember I talked to you about peacekeeping strategies, okay? I like this because it's colorful, and we're going to talk about colorful food too. So do not fight over food. We talked about it already, and you will see some redundancy because I'm emphasizing certain point. And it is not just about the bite. There is a lot going in. So for example, we have a child who has temper tantrum, okay? And then he didn't like the food, for example, or mommy is offering him something is not in his preference at that time. He will have a temper tantrum and it will become a big deal and a problem, for example. And it is, the mealtime should have more than just the food itself. It has other behavioral things brought into it. And I tell the parents when we are trying, for example, stopping the bottle. He is let's say 1 year and 2 months, and I tell mom, you need to stop the bottle. But the mom feels hard and she's stressed. So I tell her, don't let your kids see you stressed or cry. I tell her, go in the kitchen and cry. Don't let them see you cry because she feels so frustrated and guilty. So what I'm trying to say here, don't let the children feel you're stressed about their meal because that is negative reinforcement. You know, raising kids, when they do good things, maybe we don't react many times. But the minute we do, they do something wrong, we react and drop whatever we're doing and come to them. For example, the caregiver is busy on the phone, right? The minute the child does something wrong, the child will get the attention, right? They will drop the phone and come. Let's say they broke something or hit his sister or brother or something. So that is a negative reinforcement, by the way. So when we make a big deal about the meal, they're very smart. That they're not evil, as I said, but they're very smart, and they will use some of what they learn about you sometimes and use it in a way or the other, and it'll drive you crazy. Okay, keep the food for food's sake, meaning like it's the meal, just have the meal, don't add anything to it, and just move on. Okay, when you try it, it doesn't go in, try it again, and don't give up. Like you offered some sort of food, as I mentioned earlier, sometimes it takes up to 15 times before they accept it, and you have to reach a peaceful place that there are likes and dislikes, and you eat by example, meaning by demonstration. Again, as I said, if you're sitting on the table and talking negatively about vegetables, what do you think the kid will do? Or you don't even eat vegetables at all, then it will be hard to emphasize. We're all modeling all along. Okay, out of sight, out of mind. For example, there's certain food, let's say, you don't want the kids to eat. For example, candies, cookies, whatever, just hide them. Part of it, they don't need to see. Don't buy them to start with, okay? Yeah, make eating fun. And sometimes we encourage you to cook with them and prepare it with them, okay? And look at the big picture that it's not a matter on only eating. You're looking at nutrition. You're building other kind of morals and behavior in this process, okay? Now, tips for picky eating stage when they start things getting out of control. I found this also online. I referenced it. This is strawberry and cheese. They call them the strawberry mice. And at some point, we're going to talk about helping them, asking them to cook with you. Okay. So make, again, the family style will be is, again, you eat together, have a meal time together, and the food you prepare is whatever traditional food you would like them to eat, and start early with that. Try to avoid the food fights as much as you can. Be receptive to the likes and dislikes, and don't bribe them every time, because then you are trapping yourself in a different place. Try and try again. Give variety all the time. It's not going to be the same pasta every day. Again, you can have different variety, add colors to it, add different flavors to it, and make it fun. And it's very important to involve the kids. The same thing, when we invest time preparing something, we would like to enjoy it or would like other people to enjoy it. So sometimes you can have the kids involved. So for example, sometimes I advise the parents, go to YouTube. And for example, even the kids who has, for example, constipated, they need high fiber and they don't like to eat fruits or whatever and vegetables. I tell them, okay, go to YouTube, find a nice recipe, you and your kid together, and prepare it together. Because the minute they are part of it, they feel I'm the little chef, I can prepare it, and then they will be proud to offer it to others. And the food bridge is basically, if you try some sort of food and they like it, and you want to try something else, then something else, try to pick something very similar to what they accepted. It can be similar in color or in smell or others. And slowly you add the one after and the one after. Okay, and also a fine pair, meaning, again, you offer things that are similar, and then you pair with them and team up with them when you're preparing that food. Okay, and then whatever you do at home, you try to build all these habits and routine at home, And people usually forget when they're out in the restaurant or in vacation. You have to be consistent all along, and you set those expectations and you stick to them. You have to have your foot down. Again, I said we give them options, but that doesn't mean you're going to be manipulated to bring a third and fourth option in that meal. You have to put your foot down. You don't need to yell. You don't need to scream. You don't need to be violent. You shouldn't show them you're stressed out of frustration. I know it's hard, but you just try to be calm and persistent. And again, when you do the find pair, you bring something they like with something they don't like and offer them together. Okay? Cooking together, few benefits. If you see in this picture, it's cheese and crackers and cucumber and carrots. If you offer them separately, they might not like it. But if you do some piece of art like this one, and also I give you the website in the bottom. Actually, I Googled recipes with kids and I found plenty. So you can, again, have them involved. It can be, you co-produce the plan, you together work and produce what you want them to eat. And if it's nice like this, it's beautiful. If I prepare this, I might not eat it because it's lovely, but for kids, they would love to eat it. Okay, cooking together, why? Okay, it can be part of the culture. It's so much fun. Remember, they will remember it all their lives because it's a quality time with their parents or with their mom in the kitchen, but it has to be safe, okay? You cannot give them sharp objects or let them work on the stove and they get burned or something happened. They have to be closely supervised. You can actually, like, you steam some carrots and give them a plastic knife and let them cut it, for example, right? Like this one in the picture, give them the cubes of the cheese and let them organize it in a shape or something. So they can, or peel the lettuce for you, right? For the older kids, they can actually cut stuff. They can actually prepare stuff. They can even, and it makes them smarter. What they mean by that, like measurements. For example, I need 5 eggs. They will give you 5 eggs. Maybe you're worried about the 5 eggs if they're not able to walk, but they can teach them math. You can teach them fractions, like half a cup, 1/3 of a cup, a quarter cup, and so forth. You can also teach them colors and shapes. Give me that orange, for example, carrot, and so forth. So you can help them to learn about math and shape and other. Engage other senses, because when you cook, you touch, okay? And you also smell. So that also stimulates other senses, okay? And then imagine if you ask them for their input. Earlier, we talked about going on YouTube and choosing a recipe and come doing it together and let them choose whatever. That gives them some sort of autonomy, confidence, which is not only going to be used in the kitchen, it's going to help them in school and building their personality and being able to share their opinion and to critically think. And you can have a discussion about the benefit, and that can be room for you also to talk about how healthy is it, how beneficial it is, what is the ingredients for the other older kids. Okay, go and see what vitamins in this fruit. Is this fruit better than this fruit? How high the fiber in this one? And there is a lot of educational things can go through that cooking process. Okay, other tips overall. If you have a picky child currently, you have to be very creative. You have to also be patient because you need to work with them to help them to get out of that. And maybe you also need to get out of that. Be persistent. They like usually colored food. They like finger food. They like dips. And you can use this to help them to learn to overcome their fear or hate or others. And by the way, as you know, and many of you might be parents in the call here today in this talk, kids, when you insist this is good for you, many times some have the feeling that it's not good for me, it's not good for me. So you have to be careful how much you're nagging about it and talking about it, and you have to have a different strategy about it, okay? And always offer it in small portion and make it a joyful experience, okay? And also the shapes. There's one of the pictures I saw, they cut the fruits into stars, or Kirsten and others. So it's always fun to have them. And if you have dough, you want to make cookies and others, they can be helping you with this. And you can have some other recipes that are more healthy too. Okay. And this is the cook together piece. I'm going to share this website, which most of my material from this, it belongs to the American Academy of Pediatrics. It's called healthychildrenoneword.org. And there's 67,000 pediatricians involved in it. You'll find almost everything you're thinking about, from how to feed, how much to feed, breastfeeding, even adolescent stuff, everything is there. And there is this food fight book, also published by the American, you see their logo there. It's also a very helpful book that some of these materials from it. And the more I read this book, and the more I learn, okay? Thank you all very much for listening. I appreciate that. And thank you for the IPH for the invitation. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Dr. Khidir, for that very insightful presentation. So we have some questions coming in, and I will start with the questions. So we have a question by one of the participants who said that her kid was breastfed, for about 2 years and is a normal weight, healthy, happy baby, a 4-year-old kid, but she doesn't eat any fruit or vegetables. And she's wondering why. So what is this aversion to fruits and vegetables, Dr. Khidir, that children have? Can you talk a little bit? I think a lot of parents struggle with that. I know you gave some tips on how they can introduce, but maybe you can just reiterate some of the things that you said, and what can help the parents with this.
Okay, thank you for the question. And I feel for the mom who is struggling with that. The good news, you breastfed for 2 years, which is great. I think not liking the fruit and vegetables and will be most likely the first thing we need to gather more information. Why is it happening? Because I always say understanding the problem is half of the solution. So the question will be, although we are not live talking to each other to get more questions, but I would leave the mom with few questions to look into, and that will turn her around to try to figure out, maybe that's the reason. The first thing is fruit and vegetable is part of your regular daily food. Number 2, is the child drinking a lot of milk or juice during the day? Because the key few things, one of them, the child needs to feel hungry to eat.
Right.
And the problem usually with the picky eating starts where we offer things when they're not hungry. And when they're not hungry, they end up eating a small piece of a snack. And because they did not eat properly, we offered the meal, they didn't like it, we ended up with a snack. That's why the rule of 4 helps some of them to have a long period of fasting, almost like 4 hours or something. And the juice and the milk, many people don't take it. It's a snack that has calories. Now, that's one thing. So mommy need to look into investigating. And sometimes I go to the point, have a pen and pencil and ask the mom or the parent or the caregiver, tell me every single thing entered that mouth. Right. How much, when exactly. 6 a.m. he took the bottle, 7 o'clock he got this, 9 o'clock, and so forth. Write it
like
down.
A food diary.
A full detailed diary with the volume and what it is, and don't underestimate anything, and then try. So you start with that, and if it doesn't work, talk to your pediatrician or come to me and we'll figure it out.
Yes, that would be wonderful. Thank you so much. So again, like you're saying, make sure, I mean, of course, it has to be detailed investigation to why and whatever is happening. Again, if maybe liquid calories are being taken, the child is not hungry enough to maybe try, some of the fruits and vegetables, you want to eat them. So great. Thank you so much. Another question, this is, for about an adolescent who's 16 years old and has developed an aversion for anything that's white in color, including like yogurt, milk, boiled eggs, etc. So the mother is struggling that if you add chocolate or any other flavor to the dairy, to change the color, that might make it more unhealthy because, they all contain an undesirable amount of sugar and preservatives. Any thoughts about that? The child seems to have an aversion to anything which is white.
So in that case, my advice will be is to go back to her pediatrician and try to figure out what is going on.
Okay.
Because you can try healthy colors. If it is only the colors, you can find mixing it like smoothies. You can have like yani the smoothies, but you said anything other than white he's not taking. I think maybe mommy needs to have him evaluated, because there are children who has some issues with texture. Others might have issues with color, and
Okay.
maybe they need to dig deeper. Is it only the food with the white color, or there's something else going on with the teenager, like his academics, his social life, his interaction, other things going on, versus
Right.
only the white? And when did it start, and how did it start, and then take it from there.
Sure. Okay. I think that that's a very sensible approach to this problem. Again, it's adolescents, a lot of things going on in their lives. So it's good to get, some more detailed information. So another question about water intake for, children and babies. So is water necessary for babies? And if yes, then what is the age, that we can start giving them water safely?
Okay, so early babies on breastfeeding and formula, they don't need water. Okay, because most of the formula and the breast milk is 70% water anyways.
Okay.
I mentioned it earlier because sometimes you are really in a hot weather and
Yes.
people really dehydrated. If the mom's still breastfeeding and she's not dehydrated enough, she can breastfeed, and that's okay, but it has to be following the routine and the timing of that. Otherwise, every child, depending on their size and weight, because if they drink juice and milk, they're getting water. It's not like us, we're trying to lose weight and we have to drink liters and liters of water. It also depends on the age and their status. For example, normally for children, they will ask for water if they're thirsty, right? What usually happens, they don't ask for water because we're loading them with juices. So maybe if we cut back in the juice, I don't think any child needs more than one juice a day. And I know
Sure.
many kids take 6 and 7. That is taking away the water anyways. So the
Yes.
kids, when they're thirsty, they drink. And a lot of
Okay.
the food we eat has water in it. So it, again, if they are outside in the heat, like in our wonderful summer and playing outside, they definitely will feel thirsty and come and drink. So there is no specific volume I can say about kids. For adolescents, they will be treated like adults.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Dr. Khidir, for that. So another question again, I'll just ask it, but you give the expert advice, again, related to teenagers, where the teenager is basically refusing to eat anything, assuming that, he's gaining weight with anything that they eat. So what advice would you put out? Meaning that they just think that anything that I eat is gonna, put weight on me, or I'll become overweight and fat.
I got it. That is another talk. But let me say this.
Yes.
I will share a couple of experiences. I don't know if we have enough time, but a couple of
Yes.
experiences. I had a mom who brought a child that is not eating, according to mom. Definitely, if they're walking and breathing, they're eating something. It can be the
Sure.
wrong thing, it can be snack or something. So
Yes.
not eating, I reach a point to ask mom to leave and talk to the kid alone.
Mhm.
And many times I sense, because teenagers are so worried about their
Yes.
figure, and they're worried about getting fat because there are some obese kids around them. So in that case, one of the first thing that mom needs to do is to look at the gross chart. Is the child following the curve? If the
Mhm.
child crossing curves down, there is an issue there. But if the child crossing the curve, then we need to look what is he eating to maintain it,
Right.
because he could be catching up with something else. Now, if the child crossing the percentile and it because he or she is worried about their figure, I usually show the teenager the gross chart. I show it to them and tell them, this is where you are. You will be fat if you are at this number. To get to that, you need another 20 kilos. And the way you're eating now, even if you improve it a little bit, you're not going to get there. So we need heart-to-heart talking to the kid, figuring out what's going on. Sometimes there is peer pressure around them, and they see other kids getting bullied because they're overweight and obese, and they don't want to be in that situation. So you need to work with them with their mindset. If it is extreme, then we might ask, if it's really extreme, we might ask psychologist input. And if it's
Right.
all the way to anorexia nervosa and other things, that's a total thing. But I see many of them are not in the anorexia stage. They are just worried, I don't want to get fat. But show
Right.
them objective data, which is their growth chart, and hopefully that help them to understand they are in a good situation if they can eat, and then work with them what they should eat, and then hopefully we'll get there.
Sure. And maybe, again, like, you're saying, Dr. Khidir, maybe even take them to a pediatrician and have that because sometimes, teenagers might listen more to somebody else rather than your own parents.
Yeah,
Uh,
I meant pediatrician. I didn't say it explicitly because the growth
yes,
chart is with the pediatrician. So
sure,
that's
sure.
one of the things. My approach to them is to
Yes.
show them the facts.
Right, right. Thank you. So, Dr. Khidir, just, talking about, general life and the real world, sometimes, of course, we have, so children are growing up and they have aunts and uncles and grandparents around them, and too many treats available to them, right? I mean, at any and every time. How does one, navigate this? What are your thoughts and advice on that?
If you remember, I put it as the first challenge, remember? And
Yes.
that's truly a challenge because many times, for example, you have kids who are overweight and you don't want them to be binging onto those treats.
Yes.
And when you talk, and some of them, the teenager is very hard to control. That's a total discussion. But for
Mhm.
younger kids, I see it becomes harder for the mom. She understands exactly what you want to tell her, but she has harder time because the grandmother wants to give them, or they go with the driver and they buy stuff and so forth. So my
Right.
advice, sometimes I tell her, bring your grandmother with you next time so she can listen and hear about this, because the control in that environment is hard. So we have two ways: either they're not in that environment and we cannot do that, or empower the child, especially if they can speak up for themselves and if they understand the outcome and the complexity and where all of this is taking them, to work with them to have some sort of a will and determination. That's another way. Or the parent will be putting their foot down and stopping that, but then you will have the peer pressure among the cousin. So it is a difficult situation, but it needs careful but firm approach. And then they can try different things, like if they are visiting them or they get visited by the family, maybe you can minimize that, which also goes into the family ties and it creates another issue. It's hard. It needs a lot of sensitive way of handling this, and it
Yeah.
depends. If they're all educated and they can understand what you're saying, you can share with your pediatrician or go to healthychildren.org. You'll find material and share it with them. And maybe as a family, you meet together, because if that's happening, the other kids and cousins are going through the same thing. So maybe it will be a whole family effort to work together to navigate this together. And so
Thank
everybody will be on the same page, hopefully. Again, I said,
you.
we're not all on the same page. Try to get everyone on the same page.
Yes, thank you. So, Dr. Khidir, another question about, how when you have young children and you're struggling to feed them and make them eat healthy, how good is, rewarding children for eating healthy? Meaning, parents say, oh, okay, you have your vegetables and we'll do this, or, you do this and we'll go buy something. What are your thoughts on this reward, cycle, sort of like for children to reward them if they're eating healthy? Any
So
thoughts?
usually we say no. But if the mom is going to lose her mind around this, I'll say, okay, the treat might not be to buy something. For example, they want to be on the screen. We said no screen during the meal, because the screen causes, sometimes it advertises for sugary, unhealthy stuff in the middle of everything, or it way slower and they don't finish their meal and they don't gain weight. So it can be, okay, I can give you, you can watch it if you finish the meal, for example.
Okay.
But be careful when you buy and do all of that, okay?
Yes.
And then if you're not going to buy, I'm not going to eat. If you're not
Yes.
going to buy me, I'm not going to eat. It's a reward. So try not to get trapped there either, because that also is not sustainable. and it can lead to other issues. Then it will be, I will not study if you not give me something. I'm not going to do my laundry if you don't give me something. You know what I mean? So it can, that's why I'm saying the food is not only the plate, it links to many other things. And we have to be careful how we approach it. So my quick answer is no, don't use the reward. But again, you have to weigh and balance. If everybody is losing their mind and it will end up with a big fight at home, maybe you can be careful how you use it. But honestly, better not to.
Sure. Thank you very much for that answer. So, Dr. Amal, and ideally, of course, you've mentioned there shouldn't be screen time, when children are having, this is, of course, older kids we can't control, but for younger kids, ideal situation is, okay, no screen time. But of course, as you also alluded to, like you have parents who are busy, mothers coming in, they just want their children to eat. So this challenge of, like not giving, so sometimes you just put the TV on or put a screen on and the child at least will eat. So how do you sort of navigate that, in the real world today? Because everybody is just on their screens.
Yeah. So remember earlier I said modeling? Yes. Because if, for example, you see families in the restaurant, they're supposed to have quality time, all of them on the phone. Exactly. So the kids will follow what the parents are doing, right? So if the parents are busy,
yes,
maybe they can work, hopefully, to have one family meal time and they sit together and eat.
Sure.
That would be ideal. And if it's not happening that way, that child, when he or she's eating, definitely depends on the age also. Is that child supervised or not? Because some of them are too young, you need to feed them. So you're actually spending time with them. So in that case, you don't need the phone. Like you hold the phone with one hand and the spoon with the other hand, it doesn't work. You go anyway. That's what people do, but that is highly discouraged because you want the child to finish the meal and go with whatever they need to do after that. So I think many people use this because they are trying to find solution to let them eat while they do something else.
Right.
Try from the get-go not to have any screen.
Right.
Ideally, it should be when they are starting, because the differentiation happened within the first 1 to 2 years, right? So I really hope the parents from that age, they start not showing screen as much as they can at all, and definitely not with the meal. If they are older, like 5, 6 years old or 10 years old, it will need from you to take the device away. It will be another fight. Yes. But again, you have to figure out a way to work on that, especially if they're independent, they can sit and eat on their own. Still, I recommend not to have the device on. And if they don't eat, khalas, sorry, we'll see you after 4 hours. Yes. The meal is gone.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much. Yeah, it's a tough situation, tough challenge in nowadays world. But yeah. Yes, I think we really need to put more effort into it right from the beginning.
Yeah, and it will take time. It's not easy, but you have to be persistent because on the long term, it's going to be a problem.
Sure. Thank you. Just one last question. I know we are over, the hour now, but we had several questions from one participant. So it's about a young child, 3 years of age, was eating solids, but the child had a fall and apparently broke, some of his teeth. And of course, the teeth were put back, but the child has stopped eating solids. So the mother is struggling with that. Any advice for her or what she can do?
So one of them, does that child eat other solids other than food? For example, they don't want to eat like rice with whatever and pasta, but they eat, for example, candy or whatever else. Okay. The reason I'm asking this question, did we lose the skill completely? Right. Or we're adding preference to the skill too? You got what I mean? Yes. And if the child has some food aversion or inability to chew, then the child needs to be referred to the speech and language specialist to retrain them again. Because what happened is with the pain, Maybe the child was eating only pure diet or scared or pain, whatever,
Right.
for a long period of time eating the pure diet. And that's why even I didn't mention it earlier, when the babies are in pure diet, you slowly add texture to it to start chewing, to train them or whatever. Because if you
Sure.
don't do it, they end up with food aversion. So if the child cannot at all chew, cannot eat solid, go to your pediatrician, please, and have him refer to SLP to evaluate them and retrain them.
Great. Thank you so much, Dr. Amal. I think it's been a wonderful and insightful session. We learned a lot of new things. We try to address some of the challenges that we face with our children with their eating habits. Really, really grateful, and thank you again for this wonderful session and taking the time out to do this session for our participants.